The topic of our next session is Lessons from Innovative Mobility Projects in Deployment. The panel will be talking about real-world experiences involving advanced mobility. Leading the session is Tim Johnson, Director of Transportation Initiatives here at NextEnergy. Tim, take it away. They should have them out here. They should be out here now.
Welcome back to another very exciting session. Over the next 30 or 40 minutes or so, we're going to hear from 4 leaders, movers, and shakers, literally, in 4 sectors that are all demonstrating proof points of solutions that are either in market now and or are using various areas of collaboration to quickly move transportation and mobility solutions into market. We're going to hear from Peter Sweatman from the University of Michigan. We're going to hear from Sharmila, who's going to talk about BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, what's going on there. Clothier, and Sue Zielinksi is going to wrap us up. But to kick us off, very happy to introduce Mr. Peter Sweatman. Peter, tell us the story. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the connected vehicle program we're doing down in Ann Arbor, not too far from here, which has been going pretty well for more than a year now. And then I'm also going to touch on what we're doing to really take advantage of that and to develop that further for the state of Michigan. So the project, of course, I think you all know, is called the Safety Pilot. The Safety Pilot Model Deployment is the full title. And I think it's important to realize that it is a model deployment. A model deployment is a deployment that's large enough to get a firm idea of the benefits of that deployment, but it's not a real deployment. And of course, the question of then creating a real deployment to follow on from that is an important question that I'll touch on. So the great thing about this technology, and the reason that the US Department of Transportation has really pushed this over the past few years, is because the technology addresses 80% of single vehicle unimpaired crashes. That's according to NHTSA. So it's worth reflecting a little bit on that. We've had some success in recent years in reducing the total number of fatalities in this country on the highways from around 43,000 down to about 33,000. That might sound like a fair bit of progress, but really that 33,000 is also totally unacceptable. So the sooner that we're able to fully deploy this technology, then that makes a huge difference in saving lives out on the road. So that is the reason that we got into this in the first place. So what is the connected vehicle technology? I think already you've heard today about vehicle-to-vehicle communication, or V2V, and V2I, vehicle-to-infrastructure communication, and then vehicle to everything else. And we're looking at pedestrians, cyclists, trains, and so on. And then you can see there under those 2 headings of V2V and V2I, there's a few examples given there of applications: forward crash warning, electronic emergency brake lamps, etc. I think the important point about this technology is that once you have that platform of V2V and V2I communication, then there are many, many applications that can be placed on that platform, and they're not all safety applications. So we start off clearly trying to address safety, but there are many other applications affecting traffic flow, energy, and so on that can be put onto that platform. So the safety applications that we've been looking at in the Safety Pilot Model Deployment: forward collision warning, emergency electronic brake light, intersection movement assist, blind spot warning, do not pass warning, left turn across path, curve speed warning, and transit applications such as right turn in front warning and pedestrian detection. And the latter 2 we've developed in Ann Arbor during this program through some student projects connected to the Safety Pilot. So as I said, they're really examples of the kind of applications that can be deployed once you have this platform. So it's a very critically important platform. So the objectives of the safety pilot were to evaluate the V2V and V2I operationally in the real world in a concentrated environment, not only those safety applications, but also security is a critical consideration. So there's a security system operating there as well. To learn something about user acceptance, to assess the role for aftermarket devices in accelerating the benefits. And that's a critical issue, because I think you all appreciate that if we rely on new vehicles to introduce this technology out there on the road, then it's going to take a number of years before we get to a sufficient density of deployment. So the ability to use aftermarket devices is very important. Identifying additional research gaps and generating data to support estimates of the safety system effectiveness. So we've done all of those things in Ann Arbor over the past 18 months. So what is it? So it's a model for national deployment of the technology. So unless we're able to get a national deployment, then really it's not going to add up to much. So it's very important to create that model and figure out how to take it to a point of national deployment. To determine the effectiveness of the safety applications in reducing crashes, and I already indicated that the applications were chosen so that they address 80% of unimpaired single vehicle crashes. Also to determine how real-world drivers will respond to the safety applications. And bearing in mind that at this point, these applications are purely advisory, so there's no intervention in the vehicle. We hear so much these days about automated vehicles and various levels of automation. We tend to assume it's already happening, but in this particular program, we're still relying on the driver to react to these warnings and information that's provided. It's a $26 million program over 2.5 years altogether, and there was a 1-year deployment which was then extended to 18 months. You can see the team there led by the University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute, key partners in the Michigan Department of Transportation, the City of Ann Arbor, Michigan Economic Development Corporation, and some other companies you see listed there. Also the Texas Transportation Institute, who are one of the larger transportation institutes in the country. So all in all, we had nearly 3,000 vehicles, 2,836 vehicles, equipped with, and already you've heard about DSRC, you know what that stands for, I'm sure, dedicated short-range communication. So that's the form of wireless communication that was reserved 10 years ago by the FCC for these kinds of safety applications. And you may be aware that there's been some, or there currently is some consideration of the usage of that spectrum for other purposes. And so we're very pleased that this is now moving forward pretty rapidly so that we can actually use this spectrum that was allocated 10 years ago for safety purposes. So those nearly 3,000 vehicles include cars, trucks, buses, motorcycles, and we're expanding that all the time. We started on August 21, 2012, and we're still collecting the data, and we're currently expecting that the data collection will be extended for another 3 years so that we can collect more information related to some outstanding research questions. We've collected almost 27 billion basic safety messages being exchanged between vehicles in Ann Arbor. 3.5 million trips, 21 million miles altogether, and almost 1 million hours of operation. So that's a tremendous database that up to this point has been delivered to the US Department of Transportation, and the Volpe Center, part of the RITA organization, is the one that's done the analysis. This just gives you an example of at any given time. So the deployment of 3,000, almost 3,000 vehicles in Ann Arbor results in a density of deployment in a given traffic stream of about 5%, no more than 5%. But it's amazing how many interactions you actually get out of that, and you can see here just at a typical instant on a given day, you can see the number of vehicles around the northeastern part of Ann Arbor that are actually our vehicles equipped. So it's been an enormous coordinated effort. It's the largest of its kind in the world. A lot of challenges, a lot of lessons, so we've had a lot of experience in putting this together. And the independent evaluator, the Volpe Center of the US DOT, has done its job so far and is about to deliver a report to the US DOT. So we are very pleased with the success of the program, and it's been said publicly that the quality of the data that we collected has exceeded expectations. So I'm pleased to say that on February 3 this year, a long-awaited US DOT agency decision was announced that NHTSA will begin working on a regulatory proposal to require V2V devices in new vehicles in a future year. And of course, that needs to be done consistent with applicable legal requirements, executive orders, and guidance. And there are many requirements that NHTSA needs to go through. And this isn't the same as bringing in a new regulation for a windscreen or a set of traffic headlights or something like that, turn indicators. This is somewhat more complex. But that's going to be moving forward pretty quickly. So the US DOT believes that this signal, an announcement, a signal it sends to the market, will enhance development of the technology and pave the way for market penetration of V2V safety applications, and that is their objective. So we're expecting that in the coming months there'll be a notice of proposed rulemaking will come out, which will tell us more about the time frame and so on for implementing this decision. So this is one of these slides that just keeps on giving. Here we are. I think there's one more. So you can see the northeastern part of Ann Arbor where we're currently operating in the red. We are planning to extend this and to build on this model deployment. So the US DOT, we believe, will continue to support this, and we're very excited about that. And we're going to build this up to 60 intersections and get a larger volume and density of connected vehicles in Ann Arbor. Part of the reason we're going to do that is because that is exactly the sort of environment we need in order to test automated vehicles, because that's a much safer environment when they're connected to be testing automated vehicles on public roads. So the critical point now is to get from this model deployment to a real deployment. And we've developed a plan at the University of Michigan in conjunction with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, MDOT, and other partners to really jumpstart this as a regional deployment. If we step back and think for a little bit, we realize the huge investment that's been made by the US DOT in this region, around about $1 billion in developing the V2V capabilities that we've been testing. Most of that has been done through the CAMP organisation up in Novi. Incidentally, it's interesting to compare our approach here with other countries where V2I, the vehicle to infrastructure communication, has been an early adopter, and we need to do more work in that area so we have day one value. So we're very excited about the positive NHTSA decision, and we now need a deployment strategy for V2I with multiple stakeholders led by the Michigan DOT, who are a national leader in ITS and in V2V and V2I. We have a very solid plan to move this forward. Why is this a great place to do it in southeastern Michigan? This diagram here, I think, helps us understand why this is a great place to do a real deployment of V2V and V2I. And shown on this diagram are the locations of the major OEM and R&D, related R&D centres where we have large company fleets operating, the existing test beds in southeastern Michigan, and there are several of those, and the data backhaul, both fibre optic and wireless, that's already in existence through the efforts of the Michigan DOT. So once we start to look at that picture, we start to realise that if we're able to deploy some more V2I, some more infrastructure communication through that area and fill some of the gaps, then we have a real deployment on our hands. So the plan is to equip 20,000 vehicles, which will be mostly company-owned, employee-driven fleets, and to install 500 sets of infrastructure, V2I, in the infrastructure through southeastern Michigan, and not forgetting the nomadic devices, 5,000 nomadic devices that can either be aftermarket or retrofit, or pedestrian safety devices, which really rely on the emerging technologies that can be used to link a smartphone into this V2V and V2X system. So I'm pleased to say that the University of Michigan has taken an initiative here with some key partners in setting up the Mobility Transformation Centre, which was launched last year. And that centre is developing an entire system of connected and automated vehicles on the streets of southeastern Michigan through 2021. I noticed Chris Baroni-Bird talked about a similar time frame in the previous panel. And that is a public-private R&D partnership, including the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, MDOT, and the US Department of Transportation. There are many other aspects to this new centre. It wouldn't have happened if we hadn't been very successful with the safety pilot model deployment in Ann Arbor. So many of our partners, and I see many faces in the audience, folks who are involved in this, and I thank them for their efforts on this program. So please stay tuned, because there will be much more happening in southeastern Michigan with connected and automated vehicles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. It's a great kickoff to this afternoon's panel. I always love hearing Peter speak. His North Carolina accent is just so soothing.
It's southern, but a little more southern.
Great. So we've learned a great deal what's going on at the University of Michigan and right down the street from here in Detroit. We're now going to hear about some very exciting work done, as often is the case in the public, in this case actually military sector, that has incredible implications for the private sector sometime soon. I'm very pleased to introduce to you Corey Clothier with Comet, and he'll explain more. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's see who's out here. Anybody I know? Okay. Jeffrey Addick, there you are, front and center. So what I'm going to show today is a little bit different. Kind of what we might think is a glimpse of the future, but it's not. It's here, it's now, and it's people that are here today. There's some visionaries. That's why I called out Jeffrey Addick. He was the first person that talked to me about this, of using automated vehicles for transportation and logistics. Paul Skelny from the U.S. Army TARDEC, now retired. Dave Thomas, I don't know if he's still here. Matt Smith from MDOT. Larry Burns, Chris Baroni-Bird. So we have a really nice group of folks that inspired this. And I'm excited actually to share with them where we're going, because we are starting to explode. We're doing some really interesting things. So the questions I put up there is, when will it happen? Where will it start? Who's going to lead it? Well, when will it happen? It's happening now. So also, who's going to lead it? Surprisingly, it's this cute little, my son calls it the robotic gondola, low speed, first and last mile transportation system. And this is the first commercially available automated vehicle in the US. They announced it at CES in January, and it was actually awarded a top 12 award from Popular Science, top most innovative products award. And thinking about CES with over 3,000 vendors there, to this be labeled as the top 12 was pretty exciting. So this is how it's going to start, or how it is starting. So we'll just show you a little bit of this video from CES. They did a nice job explaining it.
Hi, this is Melissa Riofrio from TechHive, and we're here at CES with the world's first self-driving vehicle. It's the Intadia Shuttle. It's an electrically powered shuttle that's programmed to run a specific route. It has sensors around it, so that say that you walk in front of it, it can stop itself. But most of the time, it just tools around its route, moving very quietly, stops at specific places for people to get on and off. It has these wonderful sliding doors that I totally love. And it runs at this really gentle, slow pace, so that even though I'm actually standing against these bolsters, I'm not even sitting down, I don't feel like I'm about to fall or anything. It just stops really gradually, starts really gradually, very, very gentle. Coming to you from CES, this is Melissa Riofrio from TechHive.
So what, right? This little vehicle, well, this is truly groundbreaking. We've got Google and the auto industry working on really hard problems. They're working on highway speeds and highway complexity. We're talking about kind of a campus solution that can start in that semi-controlled environment. And I've been consulting with the US Army TARDI for about 5 years, been on this project for 2.5 years. And the Army came up with the idea of using military bases as the test beds. So this is where we're getting going. This is kind of a combination of military, federal agencies. One of the ones in Texas is actually Johnson Space Center, will be one of the test beds, and then some other commercial opportunities or college campuses. So we're going to have 14 pilots launched this year, we believe. We have, all of these are in the planning stages. They all have some type of delivery date this year. And there'll be a combination of those Navia shuttles or maybe automated golf carts. Some of you may have seen those in the Google videos. So just an interesting way to start in a semi-controlled, low-speed environment. But what it's going to do, it's going to help us test the technology, test and collect data. It's going to help us build, really understand and perfect the reliability of these systems, test the safety, build policy, and then also socialize it with the consumer and the customer. So people get used to their robotic transportation. So here are some of the leaders. That's some that I mentioned by name earlier, but these are the folks that are actively working on these projects. Obviously, I got tired of putting all the logos in, and I probably didn't have permission to do it, so that's what the list is on the bottom. So we have a really robust group of partners. So I'm going to go a little higher level, and how this got started with the Army is the Army had this idea of testing robotics that are commercially available, kind of off-the-shelf robotics now, in simple applications. What does military operations need currently that robotics can help solve? So this is kind of our high-level vision map, and the only thing that we've started with is up in the upper left-hand corner of the personal transit. But we are starting planning on all of these phases, but you can see we're just scratching the surface. That 14 and 14 is only in that category to start. And we have a couple that are inspection robots, smaller inspection robots that are getting started as well. But you can see the opportunity here and what the Department of Defense is interested and willing to start testing robotics in. And drilling down a little bit, so the program is called a Rebo. So that's the high-level vision of it. It's an umbrella for all of these projects. So a Rebo, I just wanted to put this up here quickly, is to show these are the projects that are currently in planning. So we have SLAC, that's at the Stanford campus. It's a linear accelerator operated. It's a Department of Energy site, but it's operated at the Stanford campus. And we're going to have 2 of those little Navia running around that loop road, providing on-demand transportation. And Stanford is a research partner with us, as well as the Army with the Rebo. And it'll be very interesting. It'll be integrated with traffic, low speed. The highest speed on that campus is 25 miles an hour. So these things will go around and provide, a shuttle option. But when I say on demand, it'll essentially, they can call it with a smart device. So, come and pick me up. And they'll have good communication where they'll know exactly the location and exactly the pickup time. So that'll be an interesting test, and that starts in April of this year. And then West Point, we're working hard on that. That's also another Navia fleet, and that's providing on-campus transportation. Fort Bragg is I think that's where we started this planning with the Army. And that's kind of, I put all of those small vehicles that are more like golf carts, is we're providing wounded warrior transportation from the barracks to the hospital next door. But same kind of thing. It's a taxi cab fleet without a driver. So that's getting kicked off this summer. We hope to be in full operation in the fall. And then Johnson Space Center is kind of the continuation of Fort Bragg. That'll probably take place next year. And that'll be a bigger fleet, more integration, and they want to use it for campus-wide transportation. And then the little one over here is Fort Leonard Wood. We're going a little bit bigger with that, and we're working on buses. They'll start with driver assist, collision avoidance, and automated docking, and then move our way, kind of inch our way towards automation at Fort Leonard Wood. But we have 4 different pilots that we're scoping at Fort Leonard Wood, and one as simple as delivering supplies out to the training ranges, food, water, things like that. So just using these robots in simple ways to prove it and to also analyze the business case. Because in all of these situations, we believe there's a better business case than we currently have. So another quick video. This is a little bit about Fort Leonard Wood and kind of gives you a nice vision of why we're doing it and why the Army's interested.
Without a driver used to be the stuff of science fiction. Now it's actually reality. Today at Fort Leonard Wood, a company showcased its technology. Color 10's Lori Patton was there for the driverless demonstration.
What you're about to see is really just a small tram, but the people on Fort Leonard Wood say it represents limitless possibilities when it comes to sustainability, transporting troops, and even saving soldiers' lives. One look at this small tram, and it's what you don't see that can make a difference. You won't see a driver and you won't see a tailpipe. This driverless vehicle is electric.
So we're doing the research here on easy to understand systems like buses that'll then be applied to the bigger Army mission.
The Army and this installation are examining how this technology can be used.
What the Army is looking at for this post in particular is automated bus systems to move troops around, because we move a lot of troops around at Fort Leonard Wood on an annual basis.
So while a handful of people, including the post's commanding general, rode this tram as part of a demonstration, the post is looking to move thousands with this technology in the future.
Or we'll be looking at more traditional 40 to 80 person buses that will drive themselves. On post. And there's a big robotics effort that the Army is looking at as well to try to better understand how they can use robotic systems in the mission.
I think all those technologies are great once they're proven, as we saw some of the things today.
And what saves fuel and manpower now could save lives down the road.
There's the less places that you got to put soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, especially in harm's way. It always helps us to do those things.
Now, this demonstration was just one part of a larger sustainability project here on Fort Leonard Wood. That project includes using things like Chevy Volts and even vans for carpooling with soldiers. The commanding general of Fort Leonard Wood says that this is a promise that they must keep to future generations. In Fort Leonard Wood, I'm Lori Patton, Color 10 News.
All right, Lori, thanks. The December's on.
Thanks, Lori. She did a good job. So I like that video because it kind of starts to tie into the bigger reason why. So the Army is interested in this because eventually they want to have tactical, use automation and vehicle robotics for tactical situations. You can imagine delivering supplies out to a tactical environment or to the battlefield, in that way. Can't get too deep into all of the ways that they want to use it, but they see this as a stepping stone. And the point is, even if it doesn't make it to the tactical environment, it's going to provide an operational solution on the bases now. And it starts to get this technology into the hands of the military with the intent to commercialize it. So I already talked about Slack, jump past that. This is just an impact slide, just to give you something to think about. Is we presented a couple weeks ago for the White House Innovation Fellows. They have a new program called the Smart America Challenge, and we're one of the projects, and we've built a team around this. And these are the questions that they asked of, what are the impacts? So this is what we put together for it. So even though these things are low speed, they seem really simple, well, they're going to have tremendous impact, and I think they're going to help enable this new market. And then kind of to pull it together in the big picture in theme with this conference is that these are all part of this system. the connected vehicle system, whether it's connected to the smart grid, connected to the wireless communication system. It all has to be connected, and that's what we're also testing in all of these pilots. And I don't know who put that in there. So that's it for me. So that's my story. And thank you guys that I mentioned earlier, because you guys were the pioneers. You helped me get this thing started. You know, I'd never even heard about this before Jeff Riadic, and now we're doing some pretty amazing things. So thank you.
Thanks, Corey. That's great. Thanks so much, Corey. So we've heard from a large university doing amazing research that's going to make a difference soon and for a long time. We heard about a consultant who's working with disparate organizations all over the world, and this whole theme of the public-private partnerships continues to do great things, both to save lives and to provide transportation for lots of sectors who need it badly. We are now going to hear from another very interesting story from an organization that's been around a long time. Again, back to the theme of this conference, we have startups here. We have companies like Parsons Brinckerhoff, who've been around for several years. In fact, well before Sharmila Mukherjee began working with them, they put in the first subway in New York City. So this is a company who's been doing great work for many years. She's going to talk about some very exciting things going on, which we hope to see manifest here quite soon in Detroit. So with that, Sharmila, please.
Thanks, Tim.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So the project I wanted to talk about is a planning study. It's a Woodward Avenue in Detroit, which is essentially the spine of the city. There's a rapid transit alternatives analysis that's currently going on. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, but to give you a context of how everything fits in today's program. So I was here all afternoon, heard a lot about from driving to owning to sharing, then driverless vehicles, and now the other part of the mobility solution, the public transit. So just to give you a sense of, this is a project that's being funded by the Federal Transit Administration, managed by Southeast Michigan Council of Government in collaboration with MDOT, the Michigan Department of Transportation. So the purpose of today's presentation, just to give you a sense of this project would not have been possible 15, 20 years ago. Woodward has been studied to death, and nothing has been implemented for 20 years. And for reasons that I don't need to state here, because you clearly understand that it was a very auto-centric environment, and public transit was not really viewed as part of a larger mobility solution. So there's a shifting focus. It's going towards more kind of a comprehensive, more holistic mobility solution. And these are some of I'm going to only touch upon some of the projects we're working on. All of them sort of relate to that goal. So Woodward Rapid Transit Alternatives Analysis, we are towards the tail end of the project. Complete Streets project, looking at non-motorized solutions, putting a lot of cycle tracks along Woodward Avenue, kind of a companion project to the alternatives analysis. And then I-375, another alternatives analysis, which is really coming out of need. So the State of Michigan Asset Management Committee recently came up with a report. And the chairman of the committee also happens to be the project manager for the Woodward BRT from Southeast Michigan Council of Government. His name is Carmen Palumbo. He mentioned today at another meeting we had earlier that there's a $2 billion worth of roadway and transportation and freeway maintenance needs that's out there, that's unfunded. A good deal of it is unfunded. So in that context, and the economic downturn and the recession that we saw a few years ago, I think there's a different sense of how we need to approach mobility solution. I think our projects fit in there. So wanted to talk about, we are also in the ITS space, the connected vehicle deployment that Peter talked about. Parsons Brinckerhoff is a part of that as well. So who's PB? Just to very briefly talk about who we are. Tim mentioned that we worked on the New York City subway system. That was General Parsons' first project. And then we have done other things. Detroit-Windsor Tunnel, got the Engineering Excellence Award of the Century, so we have more of a comprehensive transportation experience. But this project, to kind of briefly give you the statistics, it's managed by SEMCOG, It's the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, the municipal planning organization for this region. And Parsons Brinckerhoff is the project lead. I'm the project manager for this. There's a lot of community partners we have in this effort, and that's unique. In the past, I saw, coming from Chicago, where I went to school, that there was a general disconnect between the public sector and the nonprofit partners in this realm. And I think there's greater collaboration now. So we have Michigan Suburbs Alliance, Woodward Avenue Action Association, Project Steering Committee is made of all 11 communities along the corridor. And some of you may be aware of this, that there's a recently formed Regional Transit Authority, RTA. This is the first in Michigan after 22 failed tries. So we'll see where it goes, but it's clearly an encouraging, it's an encouraging thing at this point. So 27-mile-long corridor, and it requires a lot of funding. So we have to really come up with a solution that would be sustainable. Travel time currently by transit, it's completely non-competitive. It's both DDOT and SMART. There are two different services, suburban transit as well as city provides transit as well. And if you beyond the peak hour, morning or afternoon, if you try to travel by bus, it would take you over 2.5 hours. I wanted to talk a little bit about this. This is the M1 Rail project that's going on. It's mostly privately funded with a $25 million Tiger grant from Federal Transit Administration. It's also on Woodward Avenue. It's going from Midtown, which is Grand Boulevard right here, south of Grand, to downtown Detroit by Jefferson Avenue. And it's a 3.3-mile streetcar project that's being implemented. So this is sort of a start. And that the goal is that this project would serve more of a circulator need within downtown, whereas the BRT project's going to kind of bring in the larger regional commute market into the mix. So most of you are probably familiar with this, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but it is this rolling rapid transit or bus rapid transit is a technology that's gaining ground, given the fact that light rail or any other form of higher level rail transit is more expensive. It's just hard to implement, especially in regions that are already struggling with financial issues. It really becomes an imperative to look at other options like BRT. So it has many rail-like features, has level boarding, so it's ADA accessible, and it gets priority at traffic signals and through transit signal priority. Could use a lot of transit technologies. I mean, LA Gold Metro has actually captured, which is another PB project, has taken a lot of these kind of innovative new transit technologies, some of them Corey indicated, and kind of used them in the implementation of the project. And the most important part, what makes it rapid and different from a regular bus, is the dedicated lane. It's not usually mixed in with traffic. It has its own exclusive guideway, so it's very similar to rail. This is sort of a snapshot of some of the amenities. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. These are some of the examples. So how do we brand this system? It's really, I mean, we can talk about bus rapid transit, but as soon as you mention bus in front of rapid transit, the interest goes down. So, and this is a heavily auto-centric market in Michigan. In order for folks to get out of their cars and go into any kind of other solution, congestion has to be a driver. But it also has to be, in order to bring choice riders into the mix, we understand the facility has to be state of the art. It needs to be competitive with the other option. And today I was having a sidebar discussion. There was this mindset that auto and public transit could not coexist together, but I think that is largely false, because if you look at all other metropolitan areas that are very successful, they have a combination of all of these different forms of transportation. Look at Chicago, look at Toronto, and Toronto has implemented bus rapid transit in the Viva region, in the north side of Toronto, and that's operating really well. So this is Dallas light rail system and Cleveland BRT system. The vehicle, if you take a look at it, and including the station locations, the amenities could actually be made to look very similar to rail. Not going to spend a lot of time on it, but under the FTA umbrella, there's a huge component of public involvement, including an environmental justice component to it. So we had many public meetings and took the public comments into the technical analysis, and our end result is a locally preferred option, followed by a technical report substantiated by a lot of traffic analysis, travel demand forecasting, and so forth that leads into the formulation of this LPA. It then moves forward to the next phase of the project. So these are some of the station locations. I'm not, again, going to spend a lot of time on it. Typically, it's a mile spacing, and it allows, in order for the speed and in order for it to maintain its speed, we understand that we cannot add stop at every location all along the corridor for all 11 communities to make it be rapid and be successful. The other part of this equation is the Complete Streets project. How are people going to be accessing this rapid transit? So in order for it to be successful, it needs to have, because at the end of the transit stop, when you get up, when you go to your destination, very likely you'd either be walking or you would actually be biking. We are looking at park and ride. We understand that in Southeast Michigan, especially if we are going to implement rapid transit, it would need to draw automotive users as well. So we have park and ride locations we've identified along the process as well. But this is sort of a snapshot. I don't have a lot of time today to talk about the Complete Streets project. We're looking at dedicated cycle tracks along Woodward Avenue, along with the BRT, but this is going to come behind the BRT recommendation that's being formulated right now. I'm touching upon I-375 because it's sort of bringing up a whole different aspect of the mobility issue that we have in front of us. I-375 is it's about a mile spar off of 75 that connects, that provides connection to downtown Detroit. And right now, the street connections the grid system was taken out with this. Street connections are broken by freeway and super blocks now, and no direct connection to downtown, and it almost bypasses all of the major destinations along. So I don't think these are some of the major opportunities that we are looking at in that alternatives analysis. MDOT came to the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation and City of Detroit to essentially, the process started with the lack of funding. In order to maintain I-375 in its current condition, the bridges requires rehabilitation. And the cost estimate that's been provided, it's in the range of $80 million that is currently unfunded. So with that funding constraints in front of MDOT and the communities asking that, take a different look at this, because all other cities are looking at, Toronto's looking at Gardner Expressway because it's blocking from the riverfront. So they are basically asking this physical barrier that's been put with I-375, how exactly we can improve the connections with surrounding neighborhoods and riverfront. So this is sort of the current grid system. This is where I-375, that's in the context where it exists. There's another factor. There are a lot of new growth in downtown Detroit. There's a Quicken Loan moved in. CompuWare has its headquarters now. And there's significant developable land that could have access to I-375. And there was a lot of discussion in the press, and before we even began the study, there were discussions about how we are going to be capping the freeway. We are not proceeding with any preconceived notion, but we realize whatever the final recommendation is, it needs to take into account the growing and changing needs of the community, and it has changed in the last 50 years. So the gateway to downtown and riverfront needs to look a little bit better than what the current freeway spar provides. So these are some of the gateway opportunities we are looking at. I'm not going to be able to spend a lot of time, but this will give you a sense of how the integration opportunities would present in the final option. There are some non-motorized facilities that could actually come along with that as well. With that, I'm going to wrap it up. If you have any questions, we can have a discussion afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharmila. Again, very, very exciting to see what a company of the capability and structure that Parsons Brinckerhoff has to literally transform this area and this region and then take it to other regions. So very smart. Speaking of smart, our final speaker for the panel, I'm delighted to introduce to you Ms. Sue Zielinksi from the University of Michigan SMART program. And Sue, as much, if not more than anyone I know, and maybe many of us know, is very much connected in everything we're talking about today and yesterday, and in kind of the spider web of things. Sue is that very friendly spider in the middle who realizes that it's all about that individual in the middle of it, and it all connects from there. So Sue, bring us home talking about all the great work you and SMART are doing, please. Thank you.
Well, it's really great to be here. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Oh my goodness. I'm going to be talking about the whole enchilada, and you're probably all hungry. So if you are, feel free to go fill up on food. Anyway, it's great to be here and with our partners at Next. And NextEnergy's done an incredible job, as always, at moving minds and inspiring action. In particular, Aniela, who's brought so much of it together. And there's been a lot to assimilate over the past day and a half. And so Aniela asked me to talk about connecting the dots. How do we put it all together? So I'm going to start with a little quick context. In Detroit, it's a little easier because there are not so many primary dots. I guess in the grand scheme of things, Detroit region may be considered on the automotive-heavy side of transportation equation, but that's changing. But if you look around this urbanizing world, cities are looking for this wider set of options and that are more connected. And at SMART, we work with over 25 cities, including Detroit, to help make this happen. So, and we work on different continents, including the United States, including North America. So Europe, Asia, South America, and Africa, big mega cities and small communities as well, working on applying connected systems. So why are all these city leaders and industry leaders and civic leaders so motivated to do this? Well, first of all, because we need to. There are huge challenges that call for more innovative and integrative solutions. So we're looking at urbanization, which is one of the greatest things for inspiring creativity. Once you have less space to work with, you have an awful lot more challenge to come up with creative systems and building on what's there. And then, of course, the usual challenges that we all know about, including climate change, congestion, increasing social inequity, a lot related to transportation and increasing seniors population. But also because we can. New technologies and social networks enable more choices and more nimble choices beyond our wildest dreams. And then finally, because we feel like it. So the millennials want different things. We've talked about this a lot over the course of the day and a half. And fewer are getting their licenses, more are thinking of using, not owning cars, and they're thinking more of their identities being related to their social networks and what they do as opposed to the vehicle that they drive. So last but not least, why are we searching for this broader set of connected options, or this whole system, or whole enchilada? It's a huge and major business opportunity. How do we know that? As we've seen today, big businesses are rethinking and redoing what they supply. At SMART, we work deeply with Ford Motor Company and a number of other big businesses to rethink the supply of sustainable transportation, and we do some research on that too. And of course, small enterprises have exploded into the space. Beyond who we met last night, which was super fantastic, SMART has seen through its global Moby Prize the sheer range of innovations and burgeoning enterprises emerging, and we only got a fraction of them globally. Moby Prize is a global prize that honors new mobility entrepreneurs and enterprises. The first prize was presented at Rio Plus 20 in 2012, and the next one is going to be in Detroit at the ITS World Congress in September, and it's going to feature a NextEnergy prize for Michigan-based entrepreneurs, along with a number of other subject-specific prizes. And of course, the prize is a kind of a sneaky way to crowdsource all the new mobility entrepreneurs we can find worldwide, and then to support and bolster them through research, education, tech transfer, and network support. So a whole range of services, products, technologies, designs, and infrastructure, but there's more to come. We're seeing it grow already since we first started MobiPrize. So back to the whole enchilada again. So you need these things to come together. You need to not really choose or prioritize in a way. I mean, if you think of it with a different metaphor, this is a little bit less appetizing. If God or whoever that you believe in were to say, okay, you've got to choose. Do you want a heart or a lung or a pituitary gland? And you'd kind of probably answer, well, I want all of them and I want them to work together seamlessly and I don't want them to break down. But the thing is, you've got all of these different leaders and influencers and people that are responsible for making transportation work. You've got the technology people, you've got the people that are doing services and new entrepreneurial enterprises, you've got the products folks and the manufacturers, and you've got the designers. But, you know, not out of not liking each other, they just don't end up talking to each other much. But what would happen if they did? And what would a seamless multimodal transportation system look like? If we could have the video, this is a dramatization. It's a visualization, but really it's taking all. Oh, is it possible to get the video going? Maybe just nod. Should I go on to the next thing? Ah, there we are. If we could have it a little less loud with the... So what you have is a day in the life, and it's really connecting everything together. And these are all things that already exist. They're not newfangled rocket science. It's just a matter of how we combine it and make it work. And you can really see the huge number of policy decisions that need to be made there, and the huge number of business opportunities, huge number of interactions, but also huge number of benefits. We don't have many bikes in this, or boats, but the principle is, whatever you have in your region, we do this in different regions, whatever you have in the region, you build on those, you make sure that they're connected before you start building anything new or big. You can see where the efficiencies are going to replace the need for big, heavy infrastructure in some cases, or huge, gigantic expenses. So it also kind of makes you think this is a great vision, but how do you actually make that happen? How do you get those folks to talk to each other and bring the system together seamlessly? That's what we thought at SMART. So over time, by working with those different cities I was talking about, we developed a methodology, a 4-step methodology for applying systems, sustainable, integrated, door-to-door transportation systems in cities. And it's a 4-step plan because of attention deficit disorder. We couldn't make it all the way to a 12-step plan. And the thing is, too, the future comes to different places at different times. Many of these experiences already exist in some of the greatest cities, but in every city, there's always more to do to make it more connected and to offer more choices. Okay. So I started talking about our methodology. It's pretty simple. Actually simpler than you can imagine. We convene more than the usual suspects. So we start by, first of all, someone calls us and says, can you help us with this? Because we really need to think about it as a system. And we work with them to identify who they should convene, not who specifically, but what kinds of folks. So beyond the usual planners and city leaders, we bring together the big businesses, the IT, the manufacturing, the small entrepreneurs, the NGOs, and in some cases the academic partners. And then we find out what's working. We identify what's there, and on a map, we overlay everything: bus, train, boat, highway, parking, bike share stands, taxi stands, auto rickshaw stands, everything. And where two or more things already connect, we put a red dot. And magically, the new mobility grid is revealed. It's usually a network that is much more robust than anyone knew, even in their own city. And we've had it where the leaders of these, of the transit systems, for instance, will look and they'll say, wow, I had no idea so many of my bus stops already connect to Zipcar. And, oh, well, you know, we have a really great technology system for our transit, but we could link that in a platform to all of the other, to the taxis and the shared collaborative consumption enterprises. So this is a really fantastic way of understanding then what you do next. So you can do very simple, immediate things. First of all, give out the map, because it's great for a user to know where the connection points are. It's also great for the leaders to know. Once you've done that, though, you can do really simple things like say, oh, let's move the taxi stand across the road so it's closer to the bus stop, or just very small things. At the same time, you can do revolutionary, comprehensive things. You can say, oh, there's a whole area there missing where we're going to be developing, but there's no transit. Could we put a BRT there? Perhaps we need an integrated traffic management system that covers the whole system as opposed to all the individual ones. So it's actually a methodology that's worked in transforming how people think about what they're implementing, not as their particular system, and they don't care what happens on either end, but how their system connects to the whole rest of the system. So I'm just going to show you a few images of the processes that we've had around the world. You can see it's colorful and vibrant, and we've had a lot of concrete results from seeing things in a different way. So I'm going to end by saying the Beyond the Connected Car theme has been so exciting because you understand that there's a flourishing of a number of different opportunities. And they have so many different benefits beyond what you think when you go into it. So not only does it provide this connected system, but it's also providing new resiliencies, and it's providing something that's much sexier and exciting and connected. And in the end, providing not only greater quality of life in cities, but a fantastic opportunity for economic development, industry development, and growing entrepreneurial space. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue. Wow, fantastic. So, again, we've talked about very smart and advanced research being done around DSRC at the University of Michigan. We spoke about very exciting and innovative autonomous vehicle use cases and testing that can have multifaceted use cases. We heard about an enormous engineering architectural firm working on multimodal bus rapid transit. And then Sue, as anticipated, kind of connected the dots very nicely, showing how everything we're talking about over the last day and a half is really systems, which are only and most effectively manifest when they're a system of systems, right? So that's the theme of this afternoon and the day and a half. We appreciate your attention. Very exciting, and stay where you are. In about 4 minutes, we're going to move into our afternoon keynotes. So thank you very much.